They will jump a number of times out of the water, and that fish is probably 20 feet in the air. A Mako shark can jump twice its body length. So an 8-foot Mako shark is 16 feet in the air. They're absolutely incredible. Zane and Gray said they were the greatest adversary in saltwater, and they truly are. And on fly rod, they're even better. There's another great shot of a giant Mako shark jumping out of the water. That fish is probably 500 pounds. So people often ask me, are you really landing these fish that big? We hook a lot of these fish. Hooking them and watching them jump is great. Getting them to the boat is a whole other thing. A lot of things have to line up perfectly to be able to bring these fish to the boat. Proper hook set, fish runs, makes his jumps. Once the fish is through the jumps and it settles down, I run that fish down in my small skiff, and it's a small skiff, and you'll see it in a minute. But if that comes together, we can get these fish to leader. It may take a while, but we can definitely do it. So the season, summer and fall. May, June is when the Mako sharks first show up. I would say prime time is June through October. So in the last 10 years, I've been seeing a lot more of very large Mako sharks. And what I mean very large are 500 pounds or greater. When I first started fishing this fishery, the fish were anywhere from 60 to 150 to 200 pounds. We called them schoolie-sized fish. And there were great volumes of those fish around. In fact, there are a couple of anglers in the audience that have actually fished this quite a bit. But what I've seen over the last 10 years is a fundamental shift in the fishery. The size of the fish and less schoolie-sized fish. And the reason why I think that's happening is because, number one, the food item is changing, the water temperature, and also the breeding areas for these large Mako sharks are shifting. So once they were spawning up north or breeding up north, now they're breeding right off the San Diego coast and very, very close to the beach. Some of these large Mako sharks I'm getting are less than 2 miles from the beach, which is really interesting if you surf, which I do. So the food item that I believe is really influencing these larger fish to come in is the bluefin migration, bluefin tuna. And we have tremendous bluefin fishing off San Diego now. It's unbelievable. And they start moving into San Diego in May and June. And I believe those big predators follow those bluefin tuna up to eat, and then while they're eating them, while they're feeding on them, it's very convenient for those big females to come in close to shore and dump their pups, and that's what happens. Females come in, dump the pups, and they swim north later in the year. So this is the breeding area, okay? I think there's a pointer on here. Actually, I'll do this. So this is the San Diego, the Southern California San Diego Bight, okay? So these are all kind of fathom curves. My boat is right here in Mission Bay. From here to here is 6 miles. This is the zone I fish, between here, and then up into La Jolla Canyon. That's pretty much it. So I'm targeting these fish very close, very, very close to shore. So we're not making, a 40-mile run, a 20-mile run. My furthest run, typically in the summer off San Diego, is about 6 miles. And so back to the migration of the bluefin tuna, they'll come up into this area, they'll kind of school around out here. The big Mako sharks kind of follow them up, and then they come in, and they'll go ahead and breed in this area. And this area right here is the La Jolla Canyon. This is kind of a famous shark breeding area for great whites. But now we're seeing a lot of Mako sharks breeding in that area for whatever reason. But this is the area. So from here to here is 6 miles. And then anywhere from here to here is only maybe another 6 or 7 miles. So I'm fishing in a pretty tight zone. And the cool thing is, it's very consistent. That zone is consistent every year. It doesn't shift. The fish come in and they're there. So it makes a very easy day of fishing. You're not running long distances. And we're fishing out of a fairly small skiff, which makes it pretty exciting when you're looking at a very large Mako shark, out of a bay boat. So, okay, the tackle we use. So, I start with a 14 weight, and we move up. It's called a 20 plus. I don't even know how big these rods are. They're massive, but they're all one-piece rods. Because these fish have gotten larger, I have found multiple piece rods aren't effective at fighting those fish if they sound on you. Okay? So these one-piece rods are great. In fact, Jack Cookout, who's in the audience tonight, makes a couple of my rods. They're wonderful, but you really need that one-piece rod. So when people call and say, hey, I want to come out, can I bring my own gear? I say, no, just leave everything at home because I've got everything. I mean, I don't expect somebody to have, you know, a 20-weight rod. It's crazy. And I worked with Orvis for a number of years developing a rod, and they came out with a great rod. The problem is the fish where I am are getting bigger and bigger, so, you know, we're working on that new rod at some point. Large arbor reels, any large saltwater reel works great. Usually you're putting about 18 pounds of pressure on these fish. 800 yards of backing, 60 pounds of braid with Dacron. And then I also run, I'm experimenting with monofilament now as a running line. It's actually, it's really great because it's easier to deal with when you're dealing with these big fish, getting them on the reel. Floating or sinking lines, it doesn't matter because we're not making a long cast in this game. This isn't river runs through it. This isn't Brad Pitt on the river, you know, making shadow casting. This is basically you're presenting a very large fly about 20 to 30 feet off the boat, and you're getting that fly there any way you can. I don't care, and I don't want to see a bunch of, you know, really cool casting. I just want the fly to be out. Okay, so don't worry about being, you know, the next great caster because you don't have to be. Okay, this is a real, well, that's a great question. Is this a great beginning place for fly anglers? It is. However, it can be overwhelming when you have a 500-pound, you know, fish coming at you, and the biggest thing you ever caught is a brook trout about that big. But it's exciting. The great thing about it is, and I may allude to this later on, is it builds the saltwater angler's confidence when you're catching larger fish. So you may be intimidated right off the bat, but you have multiple shots through the course of a day or the course of a couple days. So you may get a 60-pounder, you may get a 100-pounder, and then you may get that big bomber at some point. But yet you built your confidence in casting, dealing with big gear, learning how to fight the fish. Because fighting a large mako shark isn't like fighting any other fish. It is. You have to be on them the whole time. You cannot let up because they're a freight train, and they don't tire out. What they'll do is they'll run and they'll stop and they'll kind of cruise, and when they do that, they're conserving their energy. So it is maximum pressure the whole time. So for a beginning angler, you're going to become you're going to understand a lot of the fly fishing, you know, techniques when you get off that boat. You're going to come off the boat and go, wow, you know, I know how to fight a fish, and I know what it's like to be face to face with a very large fish. And so, for instance, I've had anglers that have fished Mako sharks for the first time, and that was their first saltwater fish. They caught a 200-pound Mako, and it was like, wow. Then they kind of went into the tarpon space or the tuna space, and they would tell me I was prepared for that. I was prepared for that bigger fish because of the Mako shark, because it was so in my face, and it was so there, and I got to work on presenting the fly and fighting that big fish. So it built not only their confidence, but also their fishing skill. So that's why the Mako shark's great. You don't have to be an expert angler, but you can get off that boat and be more of an accomplished angler at the end of the trip. So this is just kind of that's one of the reels I use. Those are tube flies. Sometimes I put tube flies together depending on the size of the fish. The overall length of that tube fly is probably about 12 inches. Okay, so the rig, steel leader, 8 to 10 odd hooks, and a tuna ring. So my steel leader is about 3 feet long. Then I run heavy mono behind that. 8 to 10 odd hooks, obviously you need big hooks. And I also, all my hooks are barbless. This is all catch and release fishing. No barbs on the hook. So it does two things. Number one, you hook a Mako shark, a large, or any size Mako, they run, they jump, and they break the line. Now they're swimming around with a hook and a fly and fly line or a leader, you know, on them, and they're swimming. What that does, it kind of wears them down. It's like, for instance, if you had to tow a rope with a 10-gallon bucket around all day, you might be able to do it, but it's going to wear you down over the course of time. The barbless hook is great because a Mako shark will shake that out of their mouth and it'll fall out. If there's a barb on it, it'll stick in there, so it'll harm the fish. So the barbless hook, you break them off, the shark will shake that out of the mouth.
How often does that break?
The big ones, it happens a lot. A lot. And with the big ones, I use poppers, these big foam poppers. And I've rigged them where if you have a shark break off, the popper will slide up the leader and float on the surface. So they won't be towing that big popper in front of them. Yet the hook is still in their mouth, but they'll be able to shake that out. So I treat these fish with kid gloves. They are awesome, and I don't want to do anything to harm them. I've had people offer me a ton of money to kill one for the record books. I mean, and I just won't do it. And I've had them beg, this will be good for your career, and all that. And then I will not do that because they have been so special to me, and they're such a great game fish. I could never kill one. So I do all I can to make sure that we can return every year and continue to target them.
Are they endangered, or are there a lot of them?
You know, it's hard. There's not a lot of research done. The question was, are Mako sharks endangered? Not a lot of research done on Makos. I think sharks overall are the numbers are probably down. But what I'm seeing in San Diego, we have a fairly good line of those sharks. So great white sharks get all the press. They get all the science. Mako sharks really don't because they're highly pelagic. They're very difficult to track. So I talked about the tube fly. There's the big popper. So that thing's about 10 to 12 inches long. The great thing about popper fishing is it forces the Mako shark to come up to the surface and grab the fly off the surface. And when I first started doing this, I would use big streamers that I would tie and they would float below the surface. And the Makos oftentimes would hit them deeper in the water column. But when I started going to poppers, it forced that shark to come up on the surface and grab it off the surface. And it's great because the angler can see it, I can see it, and it's typically always a positive hook set. Shark comes up, grabs the fly, and the hook is right in the corner of the mouth. But rather than the fly kind of floating even that far below the water column, you can't really see what they're doing sometimes, especially if it's late in the day when you have a heavy glare on the water. So the popper is what I use 99% of the time. And I got to tell you, it's really cool to see a big giant fish just come up and grab that thing off the surface. It's really cool. And there are more poppers. I call this the baby sea lion. This guy right here. It's huge. It's a big blue marlin popper. But I'll make these poppers that long depending on the size of the fish. There he is again. That's a big hit for Makos. They love that thing. So now back to the boat. So when people walk on my dock, they'll walk on the dock, they're ready to go. I can't wait to go shark fishing, Cap. It's going to be a great day. And they walk right past the green boat and go back to the business. And I'm like, hey guys, no, here's my boat. They're like, that's your boat? Yeah, we're fishing Makos out of that? Yep. They're like, oh. I mean, it happens. Because people think that you're going to be fishing sharks out of a big boat. This is the boat I fish out. 24-foot bay boat. Not a lot of freeboard on that sucker. But it's a great boat to fly fish out of. The fly angler can stand, I don't recommend you stand up here, but in the cockpit, they can see the fish come to the boat. I can stand back here and I can tease them and I can watch. And also the lower profile boat, the Makos aren't threatened by it at all. A larger boat, a big tower, they'll come in very deep and sometimes you don't have a shot at them. I think Mako sharks think that's some sort of food item. Because it floats so low to the water. And you'll see how low to the water it floats, right here. So there's a guy hooked up to a Mako. But I think they come into this boat and they kind of they're just more curious about it. And as I said, a boat with a big tower, I've seen them, I've been in a tower, and they come in and they sink out. And it's hard for a fly angler to get that shark. And it's hard for me to tease that shark up if I have to do that. Okay, so, because I fish with a lot of folks that aren't really experienced in saltwater fly fishing, chumming is the most productive way to get these fish. You can go out at certain times of year and you can sight fish to finning Makos that are on the surface with no chum. You can do that. It's a moon phase thing. It's usually August, September, and you can do it and it's really cool. But if somebody wants to get a Mako shark, I'm not going to say, hey, let's go try to find some without chum because it's just not, it's not realistic. So chumming, we cover a lot of productive water. It attracts larger Makos. It gets Makos within casting range, which is great. So if you're not used to catching really large tackle, I mean, the shark will come right to the boat, and they're not afraid of anything. In fact, I always say this, fly fishing for Mako sharks is the only scenario where you're actually being hunted down by the fish. There's no other thing like this fly fishing. And it's true, they will come right to the boat. But it gets the chumming gets the fish within range, and it makes it possible for the flying angler to size up the fish he or she wants to catch. So as we talked about earlier, let's say I've only caught a brook trout my whole life, and I go out and I make a shark fishing, and all of a sudden, oh my God, 400 pounder rolls up. I'm not going to be ready for that. Going from a 3-weight to a 20-weight, and then all of a sudden seeing a giant Mako shark. The great thing about this fishery is you're going to have a variety of size fish come in. So you're going to have a 40-pounder, you're going to have a 60-pounder, then you're going to have the big ones. So you can kind of pick and choose the fish you like to catch. And that happens throughout the course of the day. Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that. So when you're saltwater fishing, a lot of times if you hit something on it with stress, you get that shark to attack other fish. Are they attacking each other in those moments?
Yes. Okay, that's a great question. So when you get multiple sharks in a chum slick, they will attack each other. Mako sharks typically chase each other around, and when that happens, they're hard to hook because they're more focused on chasing that other one out of the slick. If you get a blue shark in the slick, that blue shark is pretty much dead. The Makos will bite it in half. They're not, blue sharks aren't as fast, so to watch that unfold is pretty crazy. If you get a sea lion in the chum slick, and there's a giant Mako, that sea lion, sometimes you'll see them attack the sea lion. It's crazy. So, the other thing is when I'm releasing those Mako sharks, oftentimes you'll see a big one come underneath. So that's where I'm up close and personal with these things, right in their mouth, and you'll see a shadow underneath it. And that's a Mako shark coming in to try to, whether he's going to attack that shark or he's just checking things out. But I think that when a shark is hooked, they're sending out a distress signal, and there's a trigger in a predatory fish like a Mako shark, a trigger in their brain that says, I need to kill that thing to get it, to eliminate it, because it's showing some sort of stress. That's what I think, and I've seen that happen quite often.
Even against other Mako sharks?
Absolutely, yeah. So here's an interesting story about Mako sharks. A female Mako shark starts with about 25 pups in vitro, okay? They have a gestation period of 19 months. The most dominant Makos in vitro eat the weaker ones. So she has usually between 5 and 10 pups that are birthed. So they're eating each other in the womb. They're pure killers. So and that light switch never goes off. And when you see these things in a slick, and Steve Ward and Jack Cook have seen this, it is intimidating. It's like, wow. You're like, I'm in this boat with these things around this boat, and I'm going to cast a fly to it. But it's pretty cool. I always say it's the best shark breed going. It's really neat.
So you see sea lions 6 miles off?
Oh, I see those 50 miles. Oh yeah, sea lions are all.
I'm assuming with chumming, you probably see white sharks.
I've chummed up three great whites in summer too. Yeah. So they're definitely around too. Yeah, they're a whole different ballgame.
Have you been on Shark Week?
I don't think I have. No.
I feel like they should have you on.
Yeah, maybe. Well, they can call me. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, this is what I'm talking about right here. So you set that chum slick out, you're waiting, and all of a sudden this guy rolls up. That's a 1,000-pound Mako shark. You see that milk crate? So I used to use a milk crate as a chum basket. Now I don't. I use a big barrel. Because right after that picture, that shark tore that off the cleat. Totally tore the thing off. And at that moment, I went, you know what? Yeah, it's time to either get a bigger boat and a bigger chum basket. So now I use almost like a trash can. But look at the size of this thing. I'm going to go back. That is not really an uncommon shark to see in San Diego. That was 3 miles off. Yeah. And that shark will get a fly. So, great whites, hard to hit a fly. They're wired a little bit different. Anyway, so yeah, look at that. Look at the eyes. Look at the teeth. I mean, so when these things get really big, now they're eating larger food items like seals, sea lions, Orvis. So they get their teeth become more like a great white. You know, if you look at a smaller Mako, they're more dagger-like, but these teeth become more sort of to eat more flesh items. Okay, so we've got a big one in the slick, right? So sometimes you don't have to do anything other than throw the fly out, strip it, you got them. But there are times when those Makos come in and they're very cautious, especially big ones. They get big for a reason, right? They're smart. They come in, they're checking you out, and they disappear. And now they're circling around. So what I do is I bait and switch them. So it's very similar to fly fishing for sailfish, right? I have a hookless teaser with a marlin skirt on it with a belly strip stuffed in it, and I'll throw it right out in front of the Mako shark. And what that does, the Mako shark will close in on that teaser out of curiosity, and then I'll get its light switch turned on, and then it's like it's game on because now it's in attack mode. And this photo right here kind of shows what I'm doing. So here I am teasing on the back of the boat. Oh, and by the way, I was doing a TV show. That's why I'm wearing an orange shirt. Typically, I don't wear an orange shirt. But there's the teaser. And by the way, the teaser is the same color as my shirt and the fly, which is really weird. I don't want to fall in the water. So there's the shark. There's the teaser. Okay, so I get their light switch turned on. They're all worked up. And if you look up here, there's the fly coming over the top. So this is another great thing for honing your skills in bait and switch fishing. If you're going to go to Guatemala or you're going to go to Baja, you're going to be able to get the timing down when the teaser comes out and you're throwing the fly out. So we work on those skills a lot with Mako sharks. And there's me just throwing off the front of the boat. So that's basically it. I'm throwing it at the teaser. So the bait switch is really cool, and you can really get those sharks worked up. I mean, really worked up to where they are just, I mean, you can throw pretty much anything out there and get them. So you get a shark that's kind of persnickety, kind of, not in the mood, throw a teaser out, boom. The thing is, as a fly angler, you really have to be on that. When I get them worked up and I pull that teaser out, you have to get the fly right in the right spot. And the great thing about this kind of fishing is we have a lot of time on the boat before these things show up sometimes. So we work on those skills. We'll go through bait and switch situations. We'll go on how to set the hook. We'll go on how to fight the fish. So you're not going at this, just stepping on the boat and all of a sudden, oh my God, I've got to deal with this stuff. We do a lot of teaching. So sight fishing. So as I said earlier, this is the ultimate on the west coast of sight fishing. You're sight fishing to a really, really big predator who loves to take the fly. And it's a short cast, but it's a really tough fight. So this is what you see a lot of times coming into the old chum slick, or I'll probably see it first. And I'll say, okay guys, get ready. And I don't get really excited. Some guys get really excited, they jump up and down. I'll be like, okay, here's your shot. And that's exactly how I say it, there's your shot. And the angler will start looking and they're like, oh my God, and there it is. And there's a big giant Mako shark coming to the boat, and they'll kind of creep in like that. And that's a very large Mako, that's probably 500 pounds. But you see how he's kind of angled and he's kind of snooping around the boat? He's right off my stern. And they come right up to the boat. And then you make the cast. And there's the shark charging the fly. You see that? There's the fly. There's the dorsal fin. And there's the tail. I don't know if you can see that. That's a very big shark. That's a very large shark.
Is that Steve Ward over there?
No, that's me. My Steve Ward photos.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Photos were too big to load on. Sorry, whatever.
What can you say?
Hey, go to my Instagram page.
That was just my head that was too big.
Oh boy.
Wardo was working in the
Go to my Instagram page.
Don't make his head any
It's
bigger.
all over it. Anyway, so the way I'm feeding that fish, I'm putting it and I'm stripping it, and I've got that fish worked up to where, he's committed on that fly. And once they commit, they're like a heat-seeking missile. They're on. Now, what's not in this presentation, I've got to really stress this, and I couldn't find the right photo. Once that shark takes that fly, you do not want to set the hook when the shark is coming at you. It's very dangerous. We're fishing with a boat with very little gun rails, and those Mako sharks, with one swipe of their tail, they can jump in the boat. And I've had it happen, and it is not fun. I haven't had one of these giant ones. I've had a couple of these giant ones get close, but it would be really, really a disaster if that happened. So I'm very, very very sticky about having people make the correct catch, have the shark take the fly and turn away from the boat. So if the shark's coming to the boat, they take the fly, you wait until the shark banks around and it is swimming away from the boat, and then you set the hook. Because if you don't do that, chances of having jumping in are, I mean, there's a high likelihood it's going to happen. And you don't want that to happen. It is scary as hell. Okay? And one that size, that thing's probably 600 pounds. That would definitely hurt somebody badly. Oh yeah. I had one 3 years ago jump and hit my outboard motor, and it literally almost crushed the whole thing. It's crazy. So there I am feeding a big manfish. There's a funny story behind this. So I brought a buddy out who wanted to catch one, and this thing showed up, and he said, "Oh, I want to do it." You know, you do it. I'm like, "Well, no, you're here." He goes, "No, you do it first." I'm like, "What?" So anyway, so I did it, but he was really seriously intimidated by the shark. And of course, that's what you're looking at. So you'll hook them that close to the boat too. I don't like hooking them that close to the boat. That's a mean-looking fish. Look at these teeth. So that's the business end that you do not want anywhere on the boat. You like taking a chainsaw and just like starting it, throwing it on the deck and throwing it,
Chasing it with the boat and trying to wear it down. How long does it usually take?
So the question is, once it's hooked and I'm chasing it down, how long does it take? A long time. I had one to the boat with Jack's group. 2 years ago, I got to the boat in an hour and 45 minutes. It was 600 pounds. Kind of depends. What's that? That was an easy one. Some are like people, they'll hook them, they'll jump, and they'll kind of just kick around and I get it right up on us. But most of them are, I mean, they're running and I'm chasing them down. I chased one for 9.5 miles this summer. So that was a long, long effort. We didn't land it. But they got some great jumps out of it.
Yeah.
In fact, the guy was like begging for mercy. He's like, "Just break this thing off." I'm like, "Oh no, we're not doing that." Then it finally Anyway, the fight. Okay, so the fight. Rod angle is critical. Okay, you can't fight these fish from up here. Okay, that angle right there is even a little high. What I'm doing there is I'm just on the surface. I'm trying to keep his head up. Okay, hook set is important. Fish coming at you, set the hook, have fish turn away. I don't get hung up on strip strikes and all that stuff because whatever way you can put that hook in that fish's mouth, do it. Okay, but as long as they're turned away from the boat. But don't do this. You can do this, you can strip strike, whatever. Okay? But as long as you're making a really, really solid hook set. If you don't make a solid hook set, two things happen. Obviously you don't hook the fish, or you hook the fish and it doesn't move away from the boat. So what does it do? It swims around the hook. And it's going, what's in my mouth? And now you've got a Mako shark 5 feet off the boat swimming around it, and at any moment that thing can jump the boat. So you have to let that shark know that, you know, get away. And those are really dangerous. Okay? And break that shark as soon as you can. The minute you hook it and the minute it stops running, maximum pressure. And when I say maximum, I mean all you got. Because it can be a long day. And I think that was a long day right there. That was 2 years ago. So talk about maximum pressure. So this guy's got a fighting gimbal on. That's an 8-foot custom rod, and you're dealing with all kinds of elements sometimes. You know, kind of an ocean that's kind of rolling. Not super bad, but you're dealing with that. You're dealing with keeping the right rod angle. So it's really important, and it is physically taxing. There's me trying to lift one up there. There's my wife. That was our third date. She's a surfer. She hates sharks. I didn't tell her we were going shark fishing. So the first Mako shows up. She was really upset. She's like, "Oh my God." Anyway, I convinced her to hook this thing. And she got to the boat. It was like an 80-pound Mako. She's a great angler now. That was her first time she'd ever gone fishing. She loves to fish, crazy about fishing. In fact, she fly fishes off of a stand-up paddleboard. That's what she did. So I created a monster. But now we have 2 young boys. She really doesn't get to get out that much anymore, but she's great. But yeah, our third date. It almost wasn't the 4th date. Okay, so once again, this is why Makos are great. The jump. The only West Coast saltwater game fish that jumps 20 feet in the air. In fact, they're one of the only West Coast game fish that jumps. Okay, that is a 600-pound Mako. leaping out of the water. It was probably 20 feet in the air. Now it's coming back down. There's a big fat Mako right there. You can see the rod in the foreground. That's a very large fish. Once again, sight fish to that. Watch the take and watch the jump. So this is the same fish on a series of jumps. So if you jump here, one down, then you jump there. So they do these series of jumps. They'll sound, they'll jump, they'll sound, they'll jump, and they'll just keep going. They'll greyhound like a big blue marlin. Incredible game fish.
Conway, what do you do with the rod when they jump?
Just hold on. You don't have to. Just go like that. I mean, or whatever. Just hold
sit
on.
there.
What'll happen is if they don't get through the jumps, they'll come up and when they jump, they flip like this. And a lot of times they'll hit the leader with their tail and they'll snap, they'll break it. But if they get through the jumps, we got a chance. Because at that moment, I'm on them and we're running those things down. But you got to get through the jumps. Here's a beautiful Mako shark, another big one. That's kind of a small one, but that was really close to the boat too. But that's a great shot. I was taken with an iPhone. So everybody thinks that's a bluefin tuna. That's actually a big giant Mako. And there it is. It's another great shot. So this is why the Mako shark is the most dynamic.
That's like La Jolla right there, right?
No, that's not. That's my secret spot.
Okay.
You should have said yes.
So this is why the Mako shark is great. Sight fishing tuna, watching the take, having this fish jump like this, and then having a chance of getting into the boat. And we're back to the photo that started out the whole presentation. This is it. This is what's etched in my mind every day I get off the boat with a client. And if we have that day, people are so happy. And so stoked to be able to see that, to be able to look at apex predator, and to do it, and to achieve a pretty great goal, right? To be able to sight fish, to watch the take, to make the hook set, to watch the jumps, and hopefully get it to the boat. It's a big deal, it really is. That's that last jump, another great jump. And all the big ones pretty much jumping. So, catch and release only, as I said earlier. So that's really my secret spot. Don't tell anybody. See how close we are to shore? That's about 3 miles off the beach. And I'm kind of releasing a Mako there. You can see how small that boat is. So, go barbels, we talked about that. Longer leaders, heat or bleed, meaning when I'm releasing a fish, don't get anywhere near me because I don't want anybody to get hurt. If you have a couple people on the boat, somebody can get a nice picture of it. I'll show you how we do the pictures now. But I will bark out orders once we get to that release stage. It's like we've got to be safe, because this can be very dangerous. And that's what I'm looking at every time, right there. And I still have all my fingers after doing this for I don't know how many years. But I got bit by a shark 4 years ago, and it was pretty crazy. And I still have the scar. So catch and release only, keep them wet. So these are the. I've been doing these photos the last couple of years. And they're great. You can't do these with big Makos. So that's probably 80 to 100 pounder. That's probably a 60 pounder. The one earlier was probably 80 to 100 pounder. So you can do that. But anything bigger than that, it gets pretty dicey. But they're a beautiful fish to look at. And that's a great photo. And I don't advocate people, you'll see people taking them out of the water and holding them like that. Number one, it's dangerous. Number one, it hurts the sharks because they're meant to be neutrally buoyant, and when you take them out of the water, it puts too much pressure on their internal organs, and it'll kill them. So you don't want to take these things out of the water. So conclusion, we have a very unique fishery in San Diego, on the San Diego coast. It's a world-class fly fishery, in my opinion, in our Southern California waters. It's close to the beach. We're not making a long run. It's for beginners or advanced anglers. You can be an expert. I have many experts who love to do this, or you can be someone who's never even fly fished. You can still have a successful day and get off that boat and go, wow, I really accomplished something great. And conservation, catch and release only. I've only done catch and release for as long as I've been doing this, and I will continue to do that. It's very important that we protect these type of fisheries because they give us a great opportunity to go out and catch these wonderful fish, but also we want to continue to come back year after year to do that. Okay, any questions?
Have you ever had any issues with great whites attacking? You said there's a section
Yeah.
there that kind of interact in the same area. Are they natural enemies to each other, or do they coexist?
So that's a great question. So
They have questions I have.
yes, so great white sharks inhabit the same area, but they inhabit shallower waters than Mako sharks. So you rarely see them together. Okay, great whites are 60 feet or shallower. Makos are 60 feet or deep. Yeah, and once in a while they'll commingle, but not really. And great whites, people think they're really aggressive. They're much more docile than a Mako shark. If I were on a sinking boat and I had a 1,000-pound Mako shark on the starboard side and I had a 1,000-pound great white on the port side, I'd jump off the port side. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near a Mako shark. They're that unpredictable. Way more aggressive than a great whites.
So I got a question, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I know we're talking about sharks. One thing that a lot of people don't know about Conway is his background with waterfall.
Oh, waterfall, yeah.
And I was going to ask, just as the dumb guy in the room, about your perspective on water quality and some of the issues we see conservation-wise there.
Yeah, so I work for the City of San Diego's Water Department, Public Utilities Department. I'm a wetlands manager, but I deal with dams and reservoirs also. And so we have, huge challenges with water in California, right? There's all these issues with, do we go desal, right, to create more water, or do we, because we import 85% of our water in San Diego County. Okay, so we suck a lot of water from Northern California and the Colorado River. So Richard and I were talking about that the other day, about some of the issues with that. California is drying up. It's drying up, as is Arizona, as is Texas. So these are things that we're really going to be grappling with, down the road. But water quality really affects our offshore fishery. When we have these big rain events, every 10 years we have massive rain events. And between those rain events we have, wetlands that haven't been purged, so we get these huge purge, this huge influx of all sorts of fertilizers into our oceans, and it really affects the food item and the ocean ecology, which affects Mako sharks and everything below them. So water's a big thing, and if we don't, if we're obviously in a 10-year drought. If we continue to go on that, it's going to be really interesting to see how it affects not only the Mako fishery, but any fishery. So, yeah.
Is Captain for clean water involved in that fight?
They are not. They're really focused on Florida. They have huge issues there. I mean, they're different, but yet they're the same. Their wetlands are being very impacted. The fertilizers, the agriculture, all that really is affecting our ocean ecology, which directly affects our fishing and how we make a livelihood. So,
This is going to be a strange question, but it sounds like maybe at the very beginning of your whole presentation, you mentioned that right now you're having some of the best fishing that you've ever seen. You're getting tons of bluefin tuna out there. You're getting tons of sharks. Is that because you're not getting a lot of that fertilizer dumping into the water because there's no rain?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea. I think that I've seen a fundamental shift in the ocean's temperatures over the last 25 years. I mean, I keep very detailed log. The water is definitely getting warmer, and so you're getting these warmer water species. And the Pacific bluefin is different than the Atlantic. They require warmer water. But who knows? I mean, this whole cycle. I was talking to a biologist. This happened 100 years ago too. So we're probably just in a cycle. And we may go back to when we had albacore. And when we had albacore, the water was cooler, and we had smaller Mako sharks because they're smaller too. So I don't know. Yeah.
So what is your temperature variance that you've seen over the last 25 years? Is there a time that these Makos like to compete?
So typically, before we started having these big ones show up 10 years ago, you would have Mako sharks showing up in the San Diego area or Southern California by late April. And they trickle in, and then you would have your peak season in August. Now they're showing up in early April, and the season's sort of, it's not peaking, but it's more sustained all the way through August and October, well, through October.
Do you attribute that to warmer water temperatures?
Yeah, warmer water temp and also the food items is hanging around. So years ago when we would have albacore, they would come in and they were gone by July. So the food item disappears and Mako's just kind of disappeared. But now the bluefin are here and they're just there. And then mixed in with bluefin, you have dorado, which is mahi mahi. They're here, which I never saw. I never saw those fish 20 years ago. And I was just out the other day. They're everywhere, everywhere. And the water's 80 degrees. And I was mentioning to my wife, I've never seen the water 80 degrees off San Diego, ever.
Time of day, the striping, does it matter to those Makos, or is it just about predatory?
It does. So I got most of my very large Makos after 2 p.m. So they like, my theory is they like the glare on the water. They're coming in from the west heading east. The glare is, so if they're preying on some large food item, like they're looking at a seal, the seal is looking into the sun, right? So they're coming in and they're using that sunlight as sort of as a counter. And when they come to the boat late in the afternoon, it's just like that. They come in, yeah, it's really interesting. That's just my theory, but most of my big Mako sharks come out at 2 p.m. Yes. What's a bad day for you? A bad day? Like in terms of number of fish?
Yeah, I mean, do you have days you don't see anything? Or
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. Oh yeah. So I always tell people you want to book at least 2 days because it gives me a chance. Because remember, these fish move around a lot. We tagged one off Scripps Pier 10 years ago. It ended up in Ensenada 24 hours later, and that's 75 miles away. So they move. So they're highly pelagic, but they're in the general area. So 2 days gives me, if I don't get any, then I can move to a different spot. But by and large, when they settle in, you're within range. It gets tough when somebody books 1 day and it puts a lot of pressure. It's like, because I could say, well, they were here yesterday, but they're not here today. Why? Because they swam 20 miles off. So yeah.
So is it just one person in the boat fishing with you, or?
I could take up to 3 anglers, but it's one person at a time. Because I don't hook 2 Makos at once. It gets really weird. So that's great. So moon cycle is pretty critical. Full and new moon, those are when you have most of your fish coming in, just like tarpon fishing. But then again, I've seen in between those moon cycles too. It's sort of, but those are good sort of periods to book around. And I always suggest people book up to that period, but not behind it. So, 5 days before a new moon, 5 days before a full moon. When do they spawn? Nobody really knows. Who knows? I mean, right now I'm seeing some small ones. So they're probably pupping in June, but I think they pup year round. Each Mako shark, they breed at different times. So that 19th month gestation period starts the clock. Oh man, so in the summer it's at least 4 days a week. And then my season pretty much stops in October. Then I go hunting. And by the way, hunters really understand this fishery. They love it because it's like hunting. We're big game hunting in essence. We're waiting for the opportunity to come by the boat. So hunters really understand this because they're getting an opportunity to really, really large game fish.
what do you hunt and where?
I love mule deer. I hunt them in California, Colorado. I'm mule deer queer, as they say.
Let's do 2 more questions. Any more questions?
Your poppers, how big's that head on the popper?
What's that? It depends. Like that. They probably got some here. I used to use these big giant ones, but they're too weird to throw. I mean, the bigger the better, but you can't throw them out there.
Let's do 1 more question. Anyone else? We'll go again. Thank Conway for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Again, guys, I want to appreciate Orvis and hosting our event. If you want to fish with Conway, don't forget, get his information. He's got cards up there as well. And as a final point, big surprise is that there's an ask here, right? Our intent is to make this an annual thing and make it 6 events every single year. So our next event is in February. We're finalizing where we're going to have the events. It's going to be either here or more tailwater, just kind of what we're solidifying. We have 3 sponsors for next year as well. And to highlight this, today and today only, if you hear anything, hear this, 30% off next year. So everything in total is $125 per event next year. Usually it's $750 for all 6 events. Today, only $525. So please, if you're interested in coming, sign up today. Tomorrow morning it turns down to, I think it's whatever 20% is, I think it's like 6 something. And then tomorrow afternoon it goes to 10% off. Saturday, it'll be full price. So if you have any interest in going, sign up today. You got that set up. And then also be aware of the 4 different sponsorship levels. Briefly, bronze is the classic membership. You go through. Silver is going to give you the access of having your logo on the site and giving your access to the banquet at the end of the year. We're going to have all the board members, all the advisory council members, everyone involved. The next level up, gold, you have the ability to speak in front of our group for 2 to 5 minutes over the course of the year. So one event, you have that ability. And then the final, platinum, you have the ability to go to dinner with someone like Conway the night before at a high-end steakhouse. $150 value, something like that, Nick and Sam's, Ruth's Chris, whatever it may be. And naturally, you have the ability to have the ability to, in addition to what you contribute there, if you have 6 memberships you raise over the course of the year, you'll be a part of our advisory council, which will allow for you to manage the endowment. So let's say we have 60 members we have this year, and 10 sponsors, we're going to have $30,000 additional money to allocate. That's going to be your opportunity to decide which nearly focused nonprofits to send money to. So, my final ask, go on the website, check it out, come next year. But again, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Barbecue's downstairs, all the drinks are here. Really appreciate you guys. It's been a phenomenal year.
Thank you.